All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Standard Specifications and Detail Committee. This meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn your mics on. I know last meeting we had a couple mics off, so make sure when we're speaking, mics are on. For those that are participating via Zoom, please state your name. If you go to speak, please state your name and make your comment so we know who we're talking to. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you'd like to comment at today's meeting, please complete the request to speak form. MAG staff can assist you with that. Move on to agenda item number 2, the call to the audience. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG jurisdiction that are not on the agenda, informational items and items on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided to the call of the audience unless the chair requests an exception to this limit. I haven't received any requests to speak for the call of the audience. MAG also provides an opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting are shared with the committee members in advance of the meeting and for consideration and will be included in formal meeting minutes. Gordon, have we received any written comments?
No comments were received online for this meeting.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, we'll move into agenda item number 3. This for the approval of June 12th, 2024 meeting minutes. Gordon's going to pull those up. If you have any comments on the meeting minutes, you can go ahead and bring those to our attention. Hopefully everybody had an opportunity to review them prior to the meeting. Hearing no comments on the meeting minutes, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, this is Warren. I will motion to approve.
Thank you, Warren. Can I get a second motion from someone?
Mr. Chairman, this is Dan. I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Dan. All right, we'll move into a roll call vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Let's go in reverse alphabetical order today, starting with Youngtown. Is Youngtown present? Tempe? Is Tempe present? Surprise?
Present.
Is that for the minutes? Is that a yay or a no?
I'm sorry. Yay.
Thank you. Scottsdale? Scottsdale, are you on? Thought I saw him. Let's get back to him. Phoenix?
Yes.
Peoria?
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. Mesa?
Yes.
Maricopa County?
Yes.
Goodyear? Goodyear? Glendale?
Yes.
Gilbert?
Yes.
Lawrence? I don't believe Florence is present. El Mirage? El Mirage not present. Chandler?
Yes.
Buckeye?
Yes.
Avondale?
Yes.
ADOT?
Yes.
Okay, going back to Scottsdale. Roy, are you there?
Yep, sorry about that. Scottsdale's yes.
And Goodyear, Marty, are you there? I'm not, thought I saw him on, but not hearing anything. So the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Gordon. All right, we'll move into agenda item number 4, cases carried forward from 2023. We'll start with case 23-09. This is to create new section 632, revisions to section 610, 615, and 616. They'll be needed to reference a new section of 632. Also revisions to detail 391-1. This one is for Warren to cover. You want to give us an update, Warren?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only change for the packet this time is one minor revision to detail 391 based on discussion in the Water and Sewer Working Group. Rest of this case hasn't changed since June. And the only change on that detail was related to the drill hole. Wait till Gordon gets there.
Warren, is the drilling something that's actually taking place right now by maybe Goodyear or somebody that's using the Type C?
That is my understanding. I have not witnessed it in the field. but
Or, I'm
that's
sorry,
my
not
understanding.
Goodyear, Avondale with Jim Badowich.
Yes.
Have you dealt with that, Dan?
Yeah, I've seen the hole. I just don't know if it's done in the field or in a shop somewhere, so.
Okay. This particular case, I thought it was ready. I feel like it's ready to go, but there was some new information that was brought to me today that I think we need to look at and at least ask our fire department. Paul had brought me some information about the attachment to the fire hydrant. Has anybody checked with their fire departments on that apparatus that bolts to the side of the fire hydrant?
It has been circulated internally. I have not received any comments.
Warren,
Yeah, that is a good point. That is a good point.
Go
Warren,
ahead,
this is Paul. My suggestion with this, because the fire department don't really want anything next to their hydrant. They're pretty picky about it. Most fire departments are, but we're pouring collars around these fire hydrants in every instance. What if we put a little can box in the collar around the fire department to access the wire? Then it would be flush. It would be out everyone's way. And no one would even know there was tracer wire there unless they knew.
No vertical protrusions.
Yeah, there would be no, so that would be my suggestion on that.
I think I like that, Paul. I think where we would just have basically the same as an access box there, or flush with the surface. Yeah, I think I like that better.
And then on the
That's an easy revision.
drilling the hole in the valve box, I brought a supplier with me today, and
Mhm.
we don't think that it's very possible to be doing that on a large scale. Drilling cast iron is very difficult. A lot of times you'll drill it and you'll think you have a great hole, but you'll have some line cracks that might not be visible until you load it. And once it's backfilled and loaded, it could fail. And again, maybe just using a little handhold box next to a Type C box instead of running it anywhere inside that box. I know the valve crew hate to see wire inside their valve boxes. They pop that lid and it's like, oh no. So that's just my other suggestion.
And that's a good point too, Paul. Throughout this case, the case itself is built on not having access in the valves because often the valves are in the street, and the intent was to have access in the right of way where it's safe for locating crews to connect to. But there was a request to have this for certain locations. for certain agencies that still wanted to have it, and not necessarily in all valves, but in certain locations is why that was added. But did you have any suggestion on how to accommodate that in that cast iron? To
The
for
same,
those one-off cases, again, this is meant to be a one-off, based on that note 8, for not as a standard install.
right, I just hate to have a picture like that put in the book and,
Be held to it.
yeah, be held to it. It's not very practical.
So
Okay, yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Warren,
Mhm.
Paul alluded to another box for the wire to come out. I'm totally opposed to having a secondary box, especially if it's out in the roadway under traffic.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the fire hydrant and the apparatus that attaches that, I really would like to take a moment and distribute this to my fire department, to my plan reviewers, to make sure this is not going to be a problem. And I would encourage every other person to do the same thing, unless if anybody's distributed to their fire department and has received feedback, bring it now. Let me know what it is. I know vertical obstructions is one thing. Gordon, can you bring back the detail that shows it attached to the fire hydrant?
And Mr. Chair, if you do, I would be happy to make a modification to this to add the alternate, so you could share that with the fire department as well, if they prefer that. So
Yeah, I think
that's fair.
being that I'm not hearing anything from the committee about running it through their fire department group, I think we're going to probably need an alternate.
That's fair. And I know all different agencies have different groups that are responsible for it. At least in Chandler, I know our water distribution team reviewed this, but they're responsible for the hydrants. So, you know, not necessarily for the fires, but for everything else, flushing, maintenance.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, for bringing that to the committee. I think that's a astute observation. Any other committee members have any comments or questions that they want to discuss on this case before we move on?
This is Jamie Erickson with the City of Phoenix. I had a quick question on it. I talked to Jose on it, and it sounds like the reason why the tracer wire was not brought to grade at the manholes for the sewers was because there was an assumption or a allowance for connecting at the service connections and then charging the tracer wire so it could be traced. There are several City of Phoenix, the large sewers that we put in that have no connections. And it sounds like in the spec, it references basically a sacrificial test station. Was that going to be direct buried at the edge of the roadway across the street?
Warren, this is your case. I'll let you answer that.
Sure. Hi, Jamie. The intent would be, if there is a port, there would be an access port in a green cover for a sewer connection. If there wasn't an available service or such, but the lines would run continuous through the sewer with the thought that the locator crew would be connecting out in the right of way, and then take their devices out to the road if they needed to trace the sewer and mark it that way. So they wouldn't have to connect at the manholes, popping the lids and so on. So again, if there's not a sewer service that's adjacent, then the designer would have to look at that long run and then put some other type of access, grade level in-ground access.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I thought going through it, and I didn't read the spec part. Jose and I kind of talked about it together, but he made a comment about it being approved by the agency outside of the roadway. And my only concern would be is it probably should be in a conduit or something, because another utility will come through and dig right through that tracer wire. So that was one of our comments. Anything direct buried in the street that's not by a facility, a service run, a valve box, a fire hydrant, something along that line will get cut. We saw it happen in light rail all the time. So just something to watch out for there.
I agree. I guess you're right, because for the typical layout, it's going to be following the sewer service, but in that scenario, it wouldn't have anything to follow. So yes, you're right, a conduit or something. I need to modify that to a
So
conduit.
what I'm hearing is at some point, the wire needs to go vertical to come to the surface. It's attached to the service itself, but it's gonna have to come up vertically to be, so you can connect to it in a can. So that section there from the sewer service to the access point would be conduit. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, if it's following a service, it's going to be attached to the service. So that I don't think a conduit's necessary there. But the scenario I think Jamie was describing was, let's say you have a long run and there aren't any services, but yet you need to locate that sewer main in the road. You may need to have some other access port along that stretch. And the spec speaks to that, but it does not say that it has to have a conduit to have it placed in a conduit. So I think that I agree that it does make sense.
It kind of follows the same conversation you were just having about the valve box installation. If you're going to run that tracer wire up the valve box and then somewhere else outside of right of way or outside of the roadway, you'll need to be careful of that as well. So if it's not coming up into the valve box or into the concrete collar around the valve box, you'll have to be careful with where it goes. If it goes across the street at a depth where another utility will come through and cut it accidentally without knowing it's there.
Yeah, Jamie, and that's kind of the intent of this case, is to kind of make this obviously, I don't think we've had bulletproof, and nothing's bulletproof, but more formal standards for this tracer wire installation. So this is hopefully going to make it a little more clear and have all the connections. But yes, so definitely good thoughts.
Warren, what I would just suggest in that paragraph above section 632.2.5, you just expand that the tracer wire has to be in a conduit, because if it's following another kind of blow-off hydrant service, I don't think it's needed. So you already have a paragraph that covers that. It probably just needs to specify in that particular location in the additional conduit.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we put that in there, I think that would cover it.
And then when it's hooked onto and traced, does the locator mark that portion, even though there's not a utility there? It's just a wire. Do they mark that wire?
That's a trick question. That's why you mark it as sewer.
Because it'll appear that there's a service there, right?
All right. And that goes back to the as-built, of course, too, that are to show these access and show the tracer wire features on the as-builts too. So you would know that this is just for access, not necessarily a service or such.
Okay, well, it sounds like we still have a couple things we need to look at and address on this case. Something we should obviously you guys should discuss at the next working group meeting, but I would encourage everybody to get to the fire department, because that's going to be a showstopper. That can be a showstopper.
Yeah, Rob Godwin, I think, is on here. He's one of my inspectors. Rob, have you in the field, have you seen how these guys do the hole in the valve box for the water valve box for the type C?
Yes, for those, they basically just jackhammer out the asphalt, and they dig down and they install the concrete. Well, for us, a cast iron riser. They install it, but the tracer wire is already looped up into the bottom portion of it. So basically, they just bring that riser up and adjust it to pavement grade, and that's when I've seen these guys sometimes they're take a chop saw or something, they're try to cut like a hole, like a notch. Because these don't have a hole pre-drilled into them. But then they bring the trace wire into the box that way, right where we've got it. We got the note about drill the hole in the riser. To me, that'd be nice if those were manufactured that way. Hey, on the other point, I heard Warren talking about, I think Jamie was asking about the sewer services. What we do in subdivisions, the sewer service has a tracer wire, and then at 40, the sewer service 45 is up, and it's vertical. The tracer wires run up to the top of that, and then when the plumber for the house comes and ties in, they tie onto that tracer wire with their tracer wire. I know there's a question about having conduit or not, but I don't think it's needed for those situations. You already have the tracer wire taped to the sewer service.
Rob, it sounded like the conduit was more if there is not a service close by and they need to get the tracer wire out of the roadway for locating purposes. That's when they would use the conduit. That's how I understood it.
Yes,
Okay, I
that's
got
what our intent was.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Is
And-
there an issue? Oh, sorry, this is Jamie again. Is there an issue with putting in the tracer wire through the valve box if it's C900? Because that's what the city of Phoenix uses.
Well, we do too. Glendale uses the same thing, type A, if you're looking at the screen.
Yeah.
That's where it would come up in that annular space between, I guess you'd call it the hat
Mm-hmm.
and the C900 coming up. That's how Glendale would recommend doing it. We don't want it to come up inside from the nut and go all the way up, just gets tangled up in the valve key. But as far as drilling the hole, I wanted to ask a question to Rob. Has that been done out in the field, or are you seeing that done? Or is it coming out into the field already drilled?
No, I've seen some contractors drill them. A lot of times when you come up to them, they're already cutting notches into them.
How challenging is
Yeah.
that? How challenging is it to drill that cast?
They've been able to do it, but it's obviously easier for them to use a saw. So it's one of those things that I think we'd had to make a note about it being a hole drilled into the cast iron. Obviously, in the C900, it's easy to do that, but I don't know if that's something.
If you cut big enough notch with the chop saw, then you can use the grommet. And as long as you get the grommet in place and the wire goes through the grommet, I think that, you know, the objective's been met. That's why it's a good idea to have the grommet in there. So if you do just have a notch in there that's been cut in with a chop saw or grinder. I saw one guy using a grinder and it was pretty fast, but you know, it's not a nice clean hole, but it's still small enough where the wire went through, or large enough where the wire went through. But again, the concern is if the edge of the box would chafe off the insulation. That's why the grommet is a great idea. So maybe leave it up to the contractor to figure out. Because again, if you take it to a machine shop, they can drill through this no problem. But in the field, it's tougher to drill. So that's probably why they use the chop saws.
Jim, is Avondale currently drilling it?
I don't know if we put any in. I'd have to check with our public works people. So most of the stuff put in by contractors. So
Has anybody tried to run the wire in between the spacing between the side and the top? That space and not having to, you know, run it like you're run right between the space there, just run it straight up and out, hold it, and so there's no hole to be drilled, and it's inside there. Don't have to do a grommet, don't have to do a hole, but just go, I mean, because they don't fit snug tight. I mean, there's spacing there. Has anybody tried that?
I don't know. I don't have much experience with the cast iron. We use type A.
Yeah, so I mean, the type A is, I mean, a simple hole you can drill. I mean, we do holes for surfaces all the time and, you know, C900, but you know, the type C, if you ran it between the space there, between the, you know, the top and the stovepipe and ran it right up through there, then you wouldn't have to. But again, I'm not very familiar with this. I wouldn't be sure if there's enough gap or if it pinched the wire or any of that stuff. If there was a space, then there's no compromising with getting dirt in, there's no hole to be cut, it would be nothing, you just run the wire straight up and out.
Thank you.
I believe, and I'll get some input on this from our distribution team, but I believe that is something I've heard that they did try in the past. And there were some pros and cons to that too, obviously space allowances and everything else, but yeah, I'll get some input on that for the working group.
So just to clarify on the type A, there shouldn't be any hole drilled. It's going to come in that annular space. Yeah, between the hat and the C900 or the concrete or whatever you're using. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments they'd like to add?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we'll do some more research and try to talk about this at our working group meeting and try to maybe get some more clarification on it, so.
Thank you, Jim. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 5, which is new cases for 2024. This is the miscellaneous correction. A couple more have been added. But if we go down to F, Gordon catch up here, but go down to F, detail 441. There was a note it was updated to add the reinforcing steel hoop. G, which would be detail 422-2, note 4, manufacturers, correction there. Also, H, section 601.4.6, compaction density. Good catch, whoever caught that one, the 698, get rid of that 3 and call it ASTM. The ASTM it actually is, which is a 698. Then you move into I, which is detail 200-1. Note 5, OSHA was spelled backwards or sideways, so that good correction. Good catch on that. We have any discussion on the miscellaneous corrections? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to agenda item number 6, which is case 24-05, revise section 631.3.5 and add new detail 341. This one is specific to poly wrapping the ductile iron pipe and protecting the ductile iron pipe for when the saddle goes on. You see some of the corrections or some of the notes that I had made to the actual language there. There was some comments at the last meeting, not to throw you under the bus, Paul, but Paul had brought up dissimilar metals and not understanding that there was an issue with I guess you would call it the double banded bronze or bronze and ductile iron pipe if they were, contacting each other. He wasn't aware of any issues, and I just wanted to bring Jeffrey Butters in from DIPRA. He's on this committee meeting. He's helping me with this case. He's going to assist me. So I wanted Jeffrey. He's a subject matter expert, or DIPRA is a subject matter expert, and I wanted Jeffrey. I wanted to give him 5 minutes just to clarify any misinformation that may be out there about what reacts to what, specific, to the potential of the accelerated corrosion between the dissimilar metals. So Jeffrey, if you can speak on that for 5 minutes, that would be great, or less.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So in the galvanic series, when two dissimilar metals come together, the one that's more electronegative will sacrifice the one that's more positive. So if you look at the scale we have up there, bronze is cathodic to cast iron and mild steel. So if you put those two side by side, the iron will sacrifice to the bronze in a corrosive environment. Now, you may not have a corrosive environment, which means you won't have much corrosion. So you won't see that effect. But if they are in a corrosive environment, then you will have that sacrifice, which is why we use zinc for anodes for cathodic protection, because zinc is more electronegative than cast iron. So in order to have corrosion to happen, you need four things. You need an anode, a cathode, an electrolyte for the current to flow through, and you need a return current path. And when you put those two metals side by side, one's going to be the anode and one's going to be the cathode. Even when you have a pipe in the ground by itself, the pipe itself will act as an anode and a cathode. So when you bring in a dissimilar metal in, you're still adding that cathode to the system.
So would it be fair to say, a clay ball that falls into the trench up against the service connection or up against the pipe, would that accelerate corrosion?
It was. There are several indications or situations that will accelerate the corrosion, such as stress on the metal. Anytime a metal is stressed, it will corrode faster, such as when you use bolts. Say, anybody's worked on cars knows that bolts will corrode faster than the rest of it because it's under stress, just like in a water system if you use mechanical joints. Those bolts under stress, anytime you get a point, such as a bolt, those points on the threads, they'll corrode faster. And then you also have an oxygen differential will cause a corrosion cell to form, which is why the pipe more likely corrodes at the bottom because there's less oxygen at the bottom because it's less disturbed soil. So there's many factors that go into why a pipe will corrode, but dissimilar metals is not going to help the situation. And
So
you can't really eliminate some of that. So what you have to do is eliminate the electrolyte. You have to get the pipe out of the system as far as that goes.
So Jeffrey, is it fair to say that using a manufactured ABC type material would slow the corrosion? Because you're mitigating the pH and resistivity by using a manufactured sand and crushed rock or stone like that, but then you're mitigating even more by poly wrapping, and then you're just layers of protection for the longevity of the pipe. Is that fair to say?
It is, yes. The more resistance you put into the system, such as a clean sand and gravel, and then when you add the poly wrap on top of that, you're just adding more resistance to the system. The more resistance, the less likely of corrosion you're going to have.
Thank you, Jeff.
If you have just sand and gravel, eventually Mother Earth is going to do what she wants to do and eventually move it out of the way.
So are you talking about migration of fines and whatnot? And
exactly, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Is there any questions or comments on what Jeffrey just explained?
I have a question, I guess, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
I've been a pipeline contractor for about 50 years. I really don't know how many thousand double brass bronze saddles I put on ductile iron, but I wonder why the whole city's not blowing up over these issues. I do think that we should protect the pipes like everybody else. I'm just curious as to why, is it just the research and technology advancement that has helped us realize that maybe a bronze saddle on ductile iron pipe's not the best solution?
Well, it's not. There's a lot of other factors that go into involved, like how corrosive is your soil. The Maricopa County isn't very wet. So the soil is corrosive more than likely when it's wet, but it's not wet very often. So therefore it takes much longer, say, than if you were in the Southwest or Southeast where it's wet all the time. It'll happen much faster there than it will in Arizona or even Southern California. But it's all based on the environment that the system is in. Maricopa is just lucky to have a drier climate because when our soil is wet, it is pretty corrosive. Mostly.
Wouldn't it seem to make might be reasonable to start testing our soil on projects before we put them in, so we know what the soil actually is instead of just guessing.
Yeah, I can actually come out and do that for you guys if you want.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey, I have one question. This is Rob Godwin. So how corrosive would you consider our alkaline soil that we have here? It's got a higher pH for the most part.
pH is a factor, but resistivity is the largest factor. They also look at the bacteria content of the soil, the salts in the soil, which we do have a lot of salts in our soil here in the Southwest. But resistivity is a big key. If the resistivity is pretty high, then you're pretty non-corrosive. But from what I've seen so far in my testing in the Southwest, we're always pretty high up there as far as corrosivity goes.
And that's native material? That's not
Yes,
manufactured material?
right. Yeah, if you dig up a pipe and just like dig right next to it, something they just backfilled.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question, Rob.
Yeah, thanks for the answer.
So this longevity is what's leading to the detail, is seeking longevity with the ductile iron pipe. I've already shared pictures with the committee at the last meeting on what Glendale has dug up, and I've got some feedback from some of the other municipal committee members that they've experienced or heard of something similar. And really, it's just layers of protection, and we're following DIPRA's lead on this and their suggestion on how to protect this pipe for longevity. I don't want to install pipe and it lasts 30 years. I'd like it to last 100 years. If we can get 200 years out of it, even better. I know it's probably not obtainable, but
Actually,
longevity is the key.
not to interrupt you, but we do have, I believe it's 3 cities this year that we're trying to get to apply for the inaugural bicentennial club. So pipe has been in the ground for 200 years,
Wow.
in service for 200 years. It's
Well, with that, I'll open it up for more discussion or questions from committee members regarding the case that is in front of us. Not hearing much on this case as far as making revisions to what's already been kind of marked up and redlined. I'll go ahead and start having this put in AutoCAD, the steps 1, 2, and 3 drawn out in AutoCAD, and start getting something in front of the committee here in the near future. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 7. This is case 24-06, update detail 345-2. 4-inch and 6-inch water meters with on-site fire hydrants. I took feedback from those that provided it, and I changed the language. We removed the manufacturer and changed the language to, well, for the turbo meter, water meter manufacturers that at the discretion of the owner and agency, meter shall be purchased from owner agency approved vendor or distributor and installed per the manufacturer specifications. For the other meter, note 12, the other turbo meter, that was going to be UL approved. So it's the same language except for it's UL approved. So just to mention, this detail is also tied to 345-1. I highlighted yellow and green just so you know where the meter's at. Does anybody have any comments or questions on this case? All right. Am I hearing any? You got a microphone? If you turn one on, that'd be great.
We can highlight number 8 is also called out as a meter as well, right?
Oh, I missed that one, huh? Thank you. All right, thank you very much. I'll make that note, make that correction. Good catch, good eye. All right, let's move into agenda item number 8, case 24-07. This is potentially remove the detail 389 curb stop with valve box and cover. This one here, I've had multiple conversations with my water distribution team. They really don't even see it being used. Not they don't really see it, they just don't see it being used. They're not connecting existing galvanized pipe to asbestos or cast iron pipe. It's just not the case anymore. Here in a second, I'll open it up to the committee for discussion, but I'm suggesting to delete details that we're just not using, but I wanted to put this in front of the whole entire team and get feedback. If this is something that is potentially going to be used or we want to keep, I'll withdraw this case in a second. So I'd like to get everybody's feedback on it, whether they're seeing it being used or if it's an outdated detail. I'll go ahead and open it up for discussion.
This is Jamie with the City of Phoenix. We actually specifically call out that we do not allow detail 389.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah,
glad to see it go.
And that's City of Phoenix, right?
You see it in multifamily?
Yes.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
This has got.
On this-
There, a lot of engineers are copying this and using it in the multifamily. And on the type A, that concrete little base that goes over, they don't actually make that. So it actually sits right on top of the 2-inch pipe. So it's that you can't actually do any of these. They don't make it. It actually crushes the 2-inch pipe or anything like that. It actually, you can't even doghouse it, just breaks the pipe. So I agree with you. You just need to do away with it.
Yeah,
'Cause
get
that's-
rid of it. It'll
the
help
engineers
everybody.
are Getting lazy and using that. We're actually having to upsize that 2-inch core to a 4-inch because that's the smallest size of gate valve that concrete piece will sit on top of it.
Okay, that makes sense. I can tell you right now, just by looking at type A, for one, we would never do a direct tap and have a pup piece in there or a nipple piece in there. We would have the corp right on the pipe because if that thing gets hit, we're going to want to shut it off without putting everybody out of service if it gets hit somewhere. So the other thing is we would use a saddle. We wouldn't direct tap. We would use a saddle. I just don't see it being used. And City of Phoenix said they flat out. How did you put that, Jamie? You say do not use it, or how did you?
Yes, we actually have a sheet in the front of our supplements that says, let's see what it says here. Something to the effect of not allowed. MAG standard details not approved for use in the City of Phoenix. And that is one of them.
For 389. Thank you, Jamie.
389. Mm-hmm.
So this one's up for possible action. If we can get any more, if I'm not going to hear any more feedback from the committee, I'll give it just another minute for discussion if anybody has any feedback on this detail.
Other than getting the list of the other ones City of Phoenix has, it could be useful to look at for, that was the last time this year, but for next year.
That's a very good task for you, Peter.
It's in our
I can do that.
supplements. So in our published 2021 supplements, it's either the 3rd or 4th page of that document.
No, that's a great note, Peter. I think that'd be a good
I
start.
will add, a lot of them are deleted by choice. Just they're not practical for use by other agencies. It's just the way the City of Phoenix does things.
No, but often that's some of the cases we're going to bring up. We find out that there's similarities going on. And if we can start finding those similarities and cutting down on the supplement, that's always a positive thing. Yep.
And note, there are some of them that were removed since we updated our supplements. So MAG may have already deleted those details anyway.
Great. Well, not hearing much more discussion on it as far as opposition to keeping this detail in MAG, I think I could probably rely on at least one entity for a motion to approve to delete.
That's Jamie.
And at least a second here.
All right. So I move we delete mag detail 389.
All right, Jamie, thank you for the motion. Can I get a second motion?
This is Warren, I'll second.
Thank you, Warren.
Okay, let's do a roll call, starting with ADOT.
Yes.
Avondale,
Yes.
Buckeye,
Yes.
Chandler,
Yes.
El Mirage. Not present. Florence. Not present. Gilbert,
Yes.
Glendale,
Yes.
Goodyear,
Yes.
Maricopa County,
Yes.
Mesa,
Yes.
Peoria,
Yes.
Phoenix,
Yes.
Scottsdale,
Yes.
Surprise,
Yes.
Tempe,
Yes.
and Youngtown. I don't believe Youngtown's present. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, committee members. I appreciate it.
You know, if I could just make a note and to your earlier thing that you wanted to look into, Peter, I do know there's a mistake in our city supplement. It may say that we don't allow the tap and sleeve detail, but we actually do use that. I think it's MAG 345.
What I'll do.
Let's handle that on open discussion. If you can just make a note of it.
Yeah, I tend to put a report together. I'll go through and just report.
Okay. We'll get to open discussion here in a little bit. We're going to move on to agenda item number 9. This is case 24-08, revised section 321 and 326 for paving temperatures. This one is Greg. We have Greg.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, thank you very much. I apologize, I didn't make it into your packet. If Gordon's got it on the screen, perfect. So this is the latest revision. These taking the comments that were received by Mr. Rodriguez at the last committee meeting where we changed the shall to may in that third line there, and then fixed the punctuation, the comma, to a period at the end of section 710. In both sections 321 is on this page and 326 is the next one. The same changes were made across the two. We had no further comments at the working group, and to my knowledge, we have not received any comments on this case. Is that correct, Gordon?
I haven't received any, no.
Okay.
Well, with that, let's open it up to discussion to the committee. Is comments that we have today related to this case? Greg, it sounds like it's pretty close.
Sounds like it. Yeah, based on that, I mean, no further comments, and other than the slight changes that were made last time, I'd like to put this up for a vote in August then.
I'll go ahead and request it to be placed on August agenda for action.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Greg. All right, we're going to roll into agenda item number 10, case 24-09, revised section 710, asphaltic concrete to allow liquid anti-strip. This is another one, Greg, with the asphalt working group, if you want to go ahead and take it.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. So this case, we did have some movement on it at the working group, and we think we cleaned this one up significantly. It was not on the first page. Gordon, if you can go down to, yes, that one right there. So previously, if you go back, the more darker red there, kind of that line was the inclusion. But prior to this, in the previous version, we had the average of 3 rolling years, and if you had no history, and it was going to get pretty convoluted as to how that would be possibly administered. There was talk about changing, in conjunction with that, there was talk about changing the minimum requirements within MAG for Marshall and gyratory mixes above their current and historical limits of 100 PSI and 75 PSI respectively. after much discussion, it was determined that the cleanest way for this and the easy and much easier administration and not having to go chase down the historical data. And if it's a new pit, didn't have historical, was to just specifically tie a increase in dry strengths for mixes only containing liquid antistrips between the two. And everybody's doing a bunch of work. We're going to dial this in by the next working group meeting. It's looking like a 25% increase on both. So instead of 1XX, the next version should be 125 PSI is what we're thinking, not set in stone yet, and 95 PSI for gyratory mixes, only when related to the use of liquid antistrip. And then Gordon, if you wouldn't mind going down to below table 710-3, just to dot the I's and cross the T's. Oh, go up just a hair if you would, and then we'll come back down. So adding in a note there under section number 6, you now have the 3 asterisks where the other ones are there, and then down to the notes there. There's the add in shall conform to the new section. And then we have the same thing under the gyratory table. If you scroll down, same 3 asterisks, and then the same tie-in. So that way we're not changing any of the other requirements that have historically been in just for the liquids themselves.
Yeah, Greg, you're doing a great job pulling this together and like you said, simplifying it, not having to change a bunch of other stuff. So I commend your work on it.
Thank you.
I'll open it up to discussion from any of the other committee members.
Chair, I've got a question if
I
you
have
don't
one
mind.
comment. This is Warren. Where we say anti-strip right there, I think up above it's with a space, but what is that? Is that a capital or a lowercase? What is that product? Is that help me with that?
That's a good one. I mean, the anti-stripping agent itself, usually it's hyphenated in this particular paragraph, and we can make that change on there as well.
Is that a generic?
We did capitalize it as part of the section heading, but I don't know that it needs to be necessarily beyond that. It's not.
Well, I think the question is Anti-Strip, is that a brand name or
No.
it's a general name?
No, it's a general name. It needs to not be capitalized there either. On the right where your cursor is and underneath that one.
Right.
Okay.
And also maybe add the hyphen. in the-
Yes, and we'll add the hyphens to the other sections, other pieces there too.
So Chair, Greg, I've got a question. So after the last meeting, I did have some discussion with our payments group here at the city of Mesa. And I didn't get any written comments to be able to forward, and I'm trying to remember verbally, so I might be getting this wrong a little bit here. But it sounds like there was, through the pavement consortium, through ASU, there was some studies that were done on the use of the liquid anti-strip, and the results came back pretty inconclusive that there's any benefit. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, or
Sure.
add some additional information? Because from what I'm hearing, the analysis that have been done has shown that it's not that effective.
So two different, multiple pieces to this. First of all, yes, the study that was done with the particular aggregates, it was pretty inconclusive. However, just like technology is changing very rapidly within this component of our industry as well. So you're getting better technology in shorter periods of time. And if we can go back, Gordon, if you can go back to the first page there too. The other thing about this too, Ryan, was that it's mineral admixture, liquid antistrip, or the combination of the two. There's been so that study was done just comparing one to the other. There's been a lot of data using new technology and the combination of the two that has shown promising, much better. The thing about it is just using liquid antistrips by themselves, we didn't want to have somebody that historically, this was why we were trying to put the historical data in there before to maintain some level of dry strength and protection so that the liquid antistrip itself could do the heavy lift. We don't want, that's why we're going to increase the minimum dry strengths for that use only as a protection, as opposed to any other mix that might be done with just a mineral admixture. I don't know if that helps.
Well, it's a little bit more complicated to my understanding of how the payment works. So I'm not sure I can respond to any of that, but I'll try to. If you have any additional information that I can get on those additional studies or information that you're talking about that I can share back here with my team, I think that'd be helpful.
Okay.
And I can try to get some more formal comments or questions to provide. I was waiting for those written comments and I didn't get them. So I'm trying to relay the message I got verbally and I hope I got it right, but
Yeah, no, understood. So that, and I'm gonna go look at the first thing I'm gonna look at. It's been about a month and a half since I looked at it, but that website that's on there, that's AASHTO's product evaluation. That's where they go through and take all this, where they take existing, that one right there. Let me go through there and see what data's in there. And if that houses the biggest chunk of them, I'll let you know one way or another.
okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Greg, for explaining and offering that information up. Any other questions or comments from the committee on this case?
I do have one other quick thing if I can, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
We, there is a meeting coming up that ASU is putting on, and I need to look at the date real quick. I believe it's on the, sorry, I'm going to pull it up real fast. If I can find it. So it's on the 17th at 10 a.m. and I will get this to Gordon so he can distribute to the group. Talking about the new low carbon initiative and grants that are available for agencies by doing so. Part of this is going to come into play as well. The use of cement and lime is being looked at pretty extensively in the use of environmental product declarations and how that's going to be tied to low carbon materials and grant monies in this case. So there's a lot of this that's going to start coming through, looking at alternatives as well. Now we just got to make sure we provide the protection for all stakeholders.
So for ASU, that's July 17th?
Yes, July 17th at 10 o'clock. It's a virtual meeting and I will get that to Gordon here shortly.
Yeah, that would be great and get it distributed amongst the group. Now, with the anti-strip though, we're not, or are we deleting, are we reducing the use of lime or cement? Or is it impacting the use of lime and cement?
No, it could be the way it is now, it could replace if it can maintain all of the other requirements in MAG plus an additional 25% in dry strength. So that's the protection side. So it could replace if you can meet all that. But if not, it may be a combination or some may choose to not change at all.
The combination that answered my question. There could be a combination of the two. Thank you.
Correct.
All right, any other questions from the committee? All right, we'll move into agenda item number 11, case 24-10, revised section 602, trenchless or open cut installation of casing. This is the mechanical joint steel casing, the fiberglass reinforced polymer mortars. This is from Arvid. Do we have Arvid online?
Yes, sir.
All right, you want to take it, Arvid?
Yes, sir. We've run this through the working group now, a couple months, and are ready to put it out to a vote. So we wanted to put it out there this month and then hopefully next month vote on it. If there's any questions, I can take them now or you can ask them later.
So you're shooting for August action?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll take some discussion. We'll open it up for discussion and we'll put it up for possible action for the August meeting. It's open for discussion for any of the committee members. All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to case agenda item number 12, case 24-11. This is revised section 621, 760, and 771 related to corrugated metal pipe, the CMP product. This one is City of Phoenix. Who are we going to have? Jose, are you going to speak on this one?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. we try to address some of the comments that we received in the last meeting. We'll try to get up an updated document. So some of the things that we want to try to tackle is providing a little bit more guidance on requirements for pH and resistivity under the different conditions for the different type of coatings for the pipe material. So that's primarily the change, how to present that. But I don't have an updated copy yet, so we'll get that for the next meeting. But in the meantime, if anybody has comments on the current version, we're more than welcome to receive them and try to address them.
So myself and my principal engineer gave you a little bit of feedback
Yes.
from real life experience. And what we were seeing was the corrosion happening at the access point because of the cast iron. And then you have a difference in metals there.
Correct, but that is a separate case. That is with the underground storage tanks.
Underground storage, thank you.
Yes, and we can get to that one. This is particularly just the installation of pipes in the right of way.
Okay, thank you for clarifying, Jose. We'll open this up to discussion if anybody has any questions or comments on this case. All right, hearing none, we're going to move to agenda item number 13. That's case 24-12. This is
I will be at different points in a day. Check.
this is a new case to rewrite section 626, corrosion protective coating for sanitary sewer manholes and access structures. This one is also brought by the city of Phoenix. Jamie, are you covering for you?
Yes, I've been nominated by Matthew to show up here today. I know, lucky me, huh? Yes, we have rewritten our supplement to section 626 within our city details, and we thought we'd share it with MAG, thinking that the other agencies might be interested in it as well. It's almost a complete rewrite of the document, including more information on warranty, more information on new products and the approval process, how we get new products, where the approved products are per agency. So it's a little bit more in depth, but in reviewing with our contractors and our consultants, it sounds like this is working very well. We've done this on multiple projects so far. Getting this ready to go. And now, like I've said, we've updated our supplements, but we'd love to get rid of our supplement and just include it in MAG if the other agencies agree. So we've provided it to the different agencies. And I don't know, it was introduced recently, so like 2 weeks ago at the working group. So I doubt there's been a lot of time to review it with the different agencies, but if you'd please review and return any comments, we'd love to get them addressed or determine how to move forward.
So Jamie, I'm going to ask a couple questions right out of the gate. Well, for one, I'm guilty. I have not reviewed this. It was fresh off the press, so
Yes.
I had an opportunity to look at it. But can you clarify, is this going to be an epoxy coating type inside the manhole, protective coating? Is that what it's specifically for?
Yes, it's for an interior coating of the manhole. I'm not necessarily sure if it's epoxy or different materials that are included. But in the past, we've used like Sauerreisen and several different types. And we wanted to open that up to other products that would be deemed acceptable after a review of their product.
Okay, so would it include items like a triplex liner that's a fiberglass inflatable, epoxy impregnated liner that's steam cured or some of that nature, or is it more specific to spray on or trial on coatings?
Oh, you're going to make me try to figure that out, aren't you?
I don't want to put you on the spot. She has to look through it. But those are the first questions.
Yeah, if you can actually send those questions, those are great questions, and we can get them to our sewer wastewater engineers, because they're the ones who put this together since they have so much experience with the projects. And then we can get those answered for you. And if we need to determine if we need to open it up to additional things or if it's limited to certain types of materials, we can get that response for you.
Okay, and then The other thing I was wondering is how it if it even correlates with 611.5, which is the sanitary sewer manhole testing. I noticed when I thumbed through this, through the case you're bringing forward, I noticed that there was testing involved, or at least there was a paragraph for testing or something. Like I said, I haven't put a whole lot.
I think that's related to the air testing, but I was thinking the same thing, Mr. Chair. I just had to look myself, but you're right, that's specific to air testing, not the application testing.
So another thing we might want to consider is how that interacts with Title 18 for the Arizona admin code. So there's municipalities that are doing this testing for epoxy coating in different, some of them are having the manhole vacuum tested prior to epoxy coating, and then spark tested after epoxy coating. But if you refer to Title 18, the Arizona admin code for Department of Environmental Protection sewage collection systems, it's one of three options. One of them is, and I wanted to know how, if any of that will interact with this case, and if so, how. But the three options they give is the hydrostatic, where you fill it up with water, you do a leak test, low negative air pressure, or spark test. So it's one of the three in the Title 18. But I'm going to read through this and I will dive into it and see if I can get most of my answers or my questions answered. Other than that, I'll open it up for discussion to the committee.
All right. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Jim Badowich. Yeah, when we kind of hatched this in a working group, I think it was last year or maybe the year before. Yeah, last year, I think. And, you know, we basically had used the city of Phoenix. So this is kind of welcome that, you know, since we initially, you know, borrowed their spec, if you want to call it, you know, now if they're going to, you know, make it better, more detailed, and then I think, yeah, we're definitely in favor of this. And I think to Jamie's question, I think this is more just coatings that are sprayed on or troweled on. I think when you get into like relining with fiberglass and that I think that's going to have to be something different. This just from what I've read through this, you know, might require different testing. And we did ask that question when we because this we created this new section 626, and you know, because it's more of a construction thing, you know, where you're basically just, you know, supplementing the manhole. It was deemed not really a test spec. I mean, granted, there is testing in this to verify the linings, but you know, that's why we decided to stick with a separate section, because it was really a, you know, it contained basically construction. So,
you know, those things work awesome. We have them at the house. Everybody are approved.
That's so great.
So on the testing portion, you know, it's the industry standard, and I'm sure you guys are aware for the epoxy coating that it's, you know, 12 mil or 12.5 and 12,500 volts for the holiday testing. But I see holiday testing right there under my eyes aren't that good, but it looks like F. Yeah, thank you, Gordon. So I'll dig through that and I'll review it myself and send it over to my wastewater collection team. And I encourage the rest of the committee members to do the same. But thank you for bringing this new case forward. And I thank City of Phoenix for that.
Thank you. Please let us know any questions.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, we'll move to agenda item number 14, case 24-. All right, case 24-13, proposed revisions to section 620 cast in place pipe, the CIPP. This one is also brought by the Water Sewer Working Group. Warren, are you going to speak on behalf of this case?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, as mentioned, this was brought up by Blue Cord for the past few months in our Water and Sewer Working Group, and very minimal change to this section 620, just to incorporate the use of the underground stormwater retention systems, which has been fairly common, I guess, for quite some time for the cast in place pipe. And then there was also a revision to the section 620, just based on industry input on the practicality of what was previously stated. So just some minimal changes.
Thank you, Warren. We'll open this up for discussion to the committee, from the committee. Feel free. All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to items proposed to be heard for outside right-of-way cases under consideration. This is agenda item number 15, the outside right-of-way 23-6, new vegetated or rock bioswales. This one here is brought by Peter and Brashear. We have Peter here in the house, so I think Peter's going to cover this one. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Mike. Microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So during the last meeting, there was a request to provide red line versions to identify what had changed from the prior version, because there hadn't been a lot. We've been able to incorporate changes and recommendations received, I think, from 2 agencies. So what you'll see in your packet this time is a red line version of the detail outside right away, 540, which identifies what changes were made that you see on there now. And there's also a red line version of both outside right away section 640 and the check dam one, which is 644. So we haven't made any changes other than providing now the red line. So it's more illustrative on what was done last time.
Yeah, and that's appreciated. That way we don't, as a committee member, we don't have to go through the whole entire thing and start over.
And just to summarize, there had been some changes on the detail. Look at that quickly. You can kind of see the red line version of what was effectively done, which is really some cleanup of the editing of it, identifying the minimums related to the upslope regions, identifying the reference to the specification, and identifying the geosynthetic fabric. There was a change to note 2 to make it a bit more generic and add in the angularity, which was requested to put on there. Again, I think part of this was to try to make it a bit more open and generic. In terms of the detail, there weren't a lot of changes on that. The specification similarly on section outside right away 640. I think there's the major changes. Again, trying to make it a bit more generic in its referencing, so we wouldn't get rid of language that was suggested not maybe beneficial to it. The measurement payment section, there have been some suggestions on how to make those changes, so that's probably the biggest change on that. So I'd suggest looking at that. With the check dams, there was very minor change again to reference the stones that would make it up. Getting rid of the excess wording unless otherwise specified on plans or in the special provisions, those were eliminated. So, and not a lot of changes, but those are the ones we received and incorporated them into the standard and the detail.
You know, it just came to mind on the detail. Do you address armoring the slopes? Or is that just open generic as far as the type of material on the slopes?
It's generic right now.
Okay.
In fact, yeah, we just have maximum.
I see optional rock mulch on one side.
Yeah, these are options that are available. The plans will have to show specifically what's being required or being requested for that.
Maybe if it's near the stadium, they want grass.
Something like, yeah,
Okay.
hopefully not. The whole idea is
with
low impact development, hopefully
with reclaimed water.
Yeah. But things like being able to identify rock mulch, now we've got a specification that tells you what rock mulch is. So again, the idea is to put a little bit of definition, but allow the flexibility for the developer, the designer of this.
Appreciate it. It looks like it's pretty close. I think it's right there. Let's open it up for discussion from the committee. Does anybody have any comments or questions on this case?
It's Josh Ford, City of Buckeye. So the city actually went through an exercise in the last couple of years to put together an LID manual. And we retained a consultant and put together a whole manual. That hasn't been adopted. Part of what's holding up for me to adopt it was evaluating the impetus for implementation. You just require certain things, you incentivize certain things. So it's been kind of on hold, but one of the things we did when we were going through there, when we were looking at various LID applications, was we put some parameters with them, or had the consultant specify some parameters in which it would be practical to utilize the detail. And so when we're dealing with drainage, these were primarily parameters about flows, general CFSs, and or velocities. I'm just curious, I don't have a lot of history or perspective on these LID details have been developing, but are we putting any type of parameters on them?
These are construction details. We do not define design. That said, there are some general guidance, but this is not a design detail. This is a construction detail. So we always have that challenge with this group, that we have to defer to others to do the design detail and the design requirements, design specification. A lot of these that we're talking about on the LID came from, but ASU participates, by the way, in this, in our working group. And it came through several members who were part of, I know I'm going to misstate the organization, the group that put together general regional LID specifications and or details and design guidelines. So we have to be careful not to provide design guidance. That's for somebody else to do design. But if you're going to build it, here's the workings around that. So sometimes we have to actually strip off design requirements and reference, go see the plans.
Okay, thank you for that.
So Glendale did the same thing, Josh. We hired out and had them put together a manual for us to. I think I sent it over to Peter early on last year, but same thing. We haven't implemented it, but we have it there.
So somebody else has to decide what the design. It's the same with, in MAG, we don't specify how to design the specifics on a concrete pipe, or we have minimum bumpers set on sites. And that's kind of what the intent is here, that it establishes some general boundaries. Maybe that's the way to think about that. That doesn't mean somebody can't go and do a calculation, show it as something different, or show something more robust.
And I think that's what I was getting at, more general parameters, not super specific guidance, but saying, hey, something like this could generally be used with, up to 50 CFS or something, just to provide some type of reality check for people in terms of kind of an intended parameters or use.
So what I'd recommend if we want to do that, and I think that's not a bad idea, is that we look at putting something like that in the sections, the standard components of it, where we want to establish that. The detail in itself is, we've been trying to shy away from putting any design guidance in there. But that said, in the sections themselves, this may, somewhere in a title, it may say, this is only applicable for up to, or something like that. So if you would review, if there is something like that that we could adopt into the section. So, good ones be, again, the vegetated rock bioswale is one, but the check dams themselves. I mean, it's a specific one. Again, it's mostly materials related items that incorporate in that, but maybe there would be a limitation on the velocities that could potentially go through, or volumes that we go through. And I would recommend looking at these sections as the place to do that.
Well, and you're not calling out a pipe size, a specific pipe size or anything. That's all part of the design.
Yeah, exactly.
And thank you. Looking forward to seeing what you all have been working on with that.
Yeah, we've got a few more we'll be throwing at you here in a few minutes.
All right. Is there any questions or any other discussion on this case?
So this is Roy. I've got just a quick question. Peter, just in looking through this and looking at the detail in the specs, it seems like a lot of the specs, at least for the vegetated or rock bioswales, reference a lot of other MAG specifications. And I guess I was just wondering, just in general, with the measurement and payment, basically all the items basically being related to other items, other items that are already established in MAG in the specs. I was wondering, just is a specification actually needed along with this detail, or can just the detail suffice?
And there was a lot of verbiage we had on the detail to begin with that was moved over. One provides some bumpers, again, background on why is this, what's its general use, and how does it interrelate. We could put a lot of information on the detail itself. I think the intent was to try to keep the detail clean, but that said, there's no reason it can't go there. Certain things, though, construction methods, putting those all in notes maybe could be a bit cumbersome in the detail itself. It's the committee's choice and how we approach that.
Yeah, and it all takes time. We're on our second year with this case. Peter and his group has put a lot of time, and once we memorialize it into the MAG outside of right of way, we could always expand on it and add those things later.
Yeah, and again, there's always that fine line somewhere. We're going to have as these develop some references to existing MAG standards or specs, details. We're going to have other outside right-of-way ones intermixing. So we have to be real cognitive of how we do that here, so we don't get a mix up on that. If we say section 640, which 640 do we mean? We got to be very specific on those.
Fair enough. I would like to see this case go up for action at the next meeting and get it memorialized and then implement it, see how it's working. There's so much work that was put into it. I think it's there. I went through it numerous times. The one question I had just was about plating, but we addressed that about armoring the wall, the slopes. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on this case? Or if not, I'm going to suggest we put it up for action at the August meeting.
And again, if there's any comments in between there, please go through, get Gordon, send them to me, and we'll try to make sure we've got that addressed prior to then.
Yeah, Gordon, please put this up for action in August, and Peter will take all those comments and we'll get them addressed. If there are any, we'll have that discussion and see if we can vote on it in August. Thank you, Peter. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 16, outside right-of-way 23-10. This is the PVC drain basins. This one, Peter, you were going to speak on this one as well. Is that correct? Or Warren?
Between the two of us, we can probably do that.
All right, well, Warren's
Hey.
agenda, so.
I think we have Nick.
Peter, I'm also here.
Okay, Nick's on there.
Nick also, okay.
I'd prefer we defer to Nick. What do you think, Warren?
That sounds great to me, Peter. I think he's most familiar with his updates.
Yeah, thank you guys. And I'm prepared to anything the committee has to ask. Peter supplied us, we've been going through this in the subcommittee for almost a year now, just kind of knocking out little bits and pieces of it. And then Peter provided me with a pretty extensive red lines last time. So we kind of went through, marked it up as we saw fit, and added what we need to.
And the red lines are here with the new packets. You can see how we changed some things around.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Paul.
On this spec, could you consider adding something on the detail showing the ability to subgrade these catch basins in the parking lot for paving, and then putting a pup back on top of the pipe and putting the grade on it to bring them back to grade? What's happening with this in real life is these get put in a finished grade and destroyed during the paving operation in these private areas, and it's just unnecessary. What some contractors are doing now is subgrading these catch basins, cutting them off, having job paved, come back and raise them just like they do in the street to prevent all the damage that's been going on with them. So that's just my comment.
So, I think, Nick, you may be able to address it more directly. I thought we talked about that on and added some language in the spec about when these things are going to get cut to grade.
Yeah, so the scenario Paul was talking about is pretty common too, that people will, put them shorter in the field and then add what we call a riser section, which we can easily add that to the detail packet if we needed to as well. I know we have the sump inserts on there is the final, accessory piece, but yeah, that might be a good idea to add, a section or detail for riser sections as well, because that is a very common practice in the field.
Because right now it does say that it shall be cut to, basically the body gets cut at the time of final grading to match the final grade.
Right.
Mhm.
What used to happen is they put them in tall and try and work around these things. And it just, blade operators they're not that patient. So good contractors are experienced and they subgrade everything, come back and raise it later.
Yeah. Right now the way it reads, it's cut to final grade at time of excavation.
So that's before the structural section goes in,
That sounds like
the structural pavement section.
Yeah, I think Paul, you're saying damage is done when they're grading the parking lot. When you pave it, you've already got the concrete apron around it, and so the paver just paves up to this apron, because I usually see them adjacent to the curbs. And so the curb, this basically just has an extended apron so the grade is already set and placed in the concrete apron, and so the roller should not be rolling over the concrete that far. But the problem is when they're building or when they're doing the grading on the parking lot, that's when they get damaged. You got to have a concrete apron on these, otherwise they don't work. So.
Yeah, in trafficked areas, we have the concrete apron with the suggested width and depth there on the detail. So at the time when the concrete's on it, this isn't happening. Kind of like what Jim was saying, it's more or less when before the paving actually happens and there's potentially PVC sticking out of the ground. That's when we can potentially see this happening. But when the concrete apron is already there, it's protected in a way.
That's after they've achieved finished grade. So
Yes.
if there was a note on the detail that said this riser may be extended to finished grade upon construction or something, just so right now, it don't look like you can cut that pipe.
Optional riser piece or something of that
Something
nature.
like that.
No, I would agree. It's similar, Jim Badowich, very similar to, what we do when we do a pavement reconstruct, we'll lower all the manholes and whatnot, very similar to that. So they get the grading done and then bring it back up.
Because we've always worked around those at finished grade because they didn't want us to cut them for some reason. And there's no reason you can't.
But there are the extension pieces available, Nick.
Yes, and that might be a good,
piece.
I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Nick.
That might be a good detail. So at the very end of ours, we have our PVC drain basin with sump insert. That's really the only accessory part we added. But we could also add an additional detail for the riser sections and make a note, COROW dash whatever the detail is going to be, 564, for example. It'll look something like this, except it'll be our riser section or a riser section detail to show what you need to do to bring them up to grade in the field if they're short for any reason. But yes, they can be cut down very easily if you want to shorten them.
Mm-hmm. That'd be great. That was my comment. Thank you.
You think I don't know here, so I'm asking, you think a detail is probably the best option, or can we just?
I think if it's shown on the picture, because what's happened in the past is inspector says nothing shows here on a picture that you can adjust this way.
Right.
It needs to be to grade and cut to finished grade. We want to cut it down here and raise it to finished grade.
So Nick, you think that would constitute a new detail to run in conjunction with these?
Either that or just a note.
Yeah, if the note's fine and that works with everybody, it's either way. We can do one, the other, or both. So we can definitely start by adding just a note, and maybe like note 6, if you see there beneath place adapter for note 5, we could add a note, just optional riser piece can be utilized to bring to finished grade, or in better words.
Yeah, I think that would go well on the two details that we show, the basin in that isometric view. We probably want to make sure we're covered in the spec and the installation section, that we're making sure we don't contradict. On the 650.3, I think it is.
Yeah, Nick, if you, Peter, and Warren can make those changes and get them to the committee at the next meeting, that would be great. This one is another one that I would like to get up for action. If we get those, do you think we can get those revisions made for the next meeting?
Yes, that shouldn't be a problem at all.
All right. Before I move on here, I'm going to open it up for additional discussion. Does anybody else have any comments on this PVC drain basin? All right. That, not hearing any, I think with those small revisions being made, Gordon, I'd like to put this up for possible action at the August meeting, provided those notes are installed in the detail.
Yeah, I think we've got the majority of the comments we received. Last meeting was very productive. You'd given us a lot of verbal comments. We were trying to take them in there. So you'll see on the detail, a lot of those, there's no vendor references anymore. Minimum thickness has been changed on the concrete apron. The notes have been cleaned up and referenced. So I think we were able to take much of what was said verbally last time and just incorporate it without getting written.
Yeah, we beat it up pretty good.
Yeah, that was good though. No, it was finally, we kind of, maybe didn't get written comments, but we had a lot of feedback. So this is the result of all that feedback.
All right, we're going to move on to the next outside of right-of-way case. This is agenda item number 17. Outside right-of-way 24-A, this is the retention basin spillway details 510-1 and -2. Move detail 227. Peter, your group's been working on this. You want to go ahead and take it?
Which is the one we're doing?
Agenda item number 17. That's outside of right-of-way 24-A.
A. Oh, okay. -A. Blow that up. I don't know why I didn't have that one.
That one wasn't in the packet. It wasn't updated this month, so it's just online.
That's what's screwing me up. I'm looking for packet stuff, the spillway detail. Okay. In terms of the spillway detail, we haven't had any new comments. I did go out and actually just went and did some research. I wanted to see how, if we were looking at something that looked similar for concrete versions, not the ones with riprap in them. And I didn't see anything really dramatically different than what's being shown here. So at this point, we haven't had any new feedback. It's that missing piece between it, the spillway, and then the catch basin at the bottom, or the silt basin at the bottom. So, and this case also incorporates moving the sediment trap to the outside right of way, out of the existing blue book into the outside right of way, since it is truly an outside right of way.
And in what circumstance would you see this detail being used?
This is used all the time, frankly, other than there's riprap versions in concrete.
So typically what I see is right out into a retention.
Right out
pond,
to retention, yes.
Yeah, so that's
99% of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is just standardizing, provide at least a standard version of something people can take off the shelf.
So the engineer of record's not having to draw his own spillway.
We found that that's being done most of the time. Our hope is get this one in this year, then next year we're going to propose the riprap version of it. Just get one in, get the other in. And that way we should incorporate most of the spillways that are being constructed outside the right of way right now, but adjacent to it. And it has the two options, one where you've got a curb opening, or the curb cut opening, or you've got the scupper connection to it. So those are the two different details.
Hey, Peter, this is Ryan. I just noticed a spelling error in the note 1 or 2 on this page here. Or maybe it's the previous page, the word opening. There you go. Yep, in note 1, I guess there.
Thank you. I'll get that checked.
Where's the spell check button in AutoCAD?
Yes, I wish it was even AutoCAD. Uh, I will get that fixed.
All right, it's still open for discussion if anybody else has any comments or want to discuss this case.
Yeah, the majority of, one of the bigger reasons putting this in, because there's been a lot that have not been using any kind of reinforcing. You see a lot of cracking on these ones. This time, I stole heavily from Salt River Project that had a very nice detail, which they're using in substations, and took a lot of their design methodology and looked at what they did there. So this one at least incorporates, I think, something that's going to be a bit more resilient than what's in the ground.
And you're calling out bar size?
Yeah.
Great. All right, any other questions from the committee members?
Peter, one thing you may want to do as you're making the updates is, since we're moving 227 into the outside right away, go ahead and make that change there instead of the MEG detail.
I'll
And-
just attach that next time.
Okay, and similarly on the 227, then we can now reference the new details.
We'll need new detail number on that too.
Right.
Yep, I have that on my list of things to do.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 18. Another outside right-of-way case, 24-B. This is to move the detail 346 fire line detector vault from the MAG standard specifications to the outside right-of-way book. This one will also include, there's references to detail 314, call out, we need to call out, we need to reference detail 314 and get rid of the call outs for 310, 315 and 319. Also, we need to change a few things. I'm going to try to do this in one foul swoop. Make the revisions to the detail, getting rid of cast iron pipe, replacing it with ductile iron pipe, getting rid of the asphalt felt paper or whatever that's required, and using the poly wrap. So clean this up. I haven't put much more work into it other than what you're seeing on the screen here. The golf box, I haven't addressed that quite yet on the top left-hand side, but one foul swoop, get those changes made and get it over to the outside of right away, all in one vote. But it's not ready yet, obviously, but I'm going to open it up for discussion if anybody has any comments on this detail and what I'm going after on this detail. All right, hearing none, we're going to move to agenda number 19, outside right-of-way 24-C. This is for the corrugated metal pipe underground storage, detention and retention tanks. Jose, I think, is going to head this one up.
Yep. Thank you, Chairman. So this detail is presented to kind of piggyback on the other updates that we're doing to the CMP pipe specifications. Those specifications are mainly for a lot of the material in the installation. This particular detail is for the use of CMP as an underground storage system. And it's really a backfill installation storage detail to provide a little bit more guidance to it. I actually had a meeting with Zach, and I'm not sure if Zach is here, with Contact earlier today. We're going to be making a few changes and try to clean up a little bit this detail that the outside right-of-way group has been working on very diligently. Peter, the only thing, I haven't been able to join those meetings, but I'm going to have to jump in. The only thing I was discussing with Zach primarily is, like, since we're going to refer back to the right-of-way details related to compaction, I do want to keep that kind of similar language related to foundation bedding, hunching, initial backfill, final backfill. I think they were using the terminology of structural backfill in this detail.
Yeah.
Which is going to lead to some confusion there. So that's probably a lot of the cleanup that we're going to do here. So
Very good.
they jive with each other.
Yeah, I was going back and forth on my last review of looking at the MAG standard versus what's shown here, and we got a little bit cleaned up, but it does need a little bit.
Yeah. So
you're going to consider incorporating the MAG water jetting as an option for backfill, at least for haunching?
So this particular detail actually describes what I've heard more. It's kind of should be becoming the industry standard of slicing.
Mhm.
The the bedding underneath the haunches.
Right.
Prior to compaction. That's something we can try to incorporate into the 601 because it really applies to any kind of pipe.
Right.
So Peter, I see you're shaking your head.
You don't want to need jutting around.
So with the CMP, Peter, we had some pretty good experience with water jetting if the soil conditions are met and it's done properly, irrigated properly. Mag's got a section addressing that, but we had done some 96-inch out at Westgate, and when we dug it up, what did Tom say? Decade, 2 decades
Yeah.
later, is 20 years later. It was very well haunched, to say the least. When it pulled out, it left all the corrugations in the sand.
These water settle everything.
It's not water settling, Paul. We're not going to use water settling as an example. This is water jetting. It's an irrigation method.
And yeah, that from my limited experience with it, because it's not as common anymore. It was just, if it's not done properly, you deal with a lot more issues.
Exactly.
That's why I think overall as an industry, we went away from it. But yes, so this detail does have a note to, in order to achieve compaction under the haunches, is to do the slicing method, which is kind of like making sure you're shoveling in underneath the pipe.
That's the structure of that pipe, is the haunches.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's the area that we can't test, right? We test right next to the pipe.
I would recommend, as putting in a bunch of this, is flowable material to 1 foot above the pipe. Just use a flowable material all the
Just
way 1 foot above the
CSM.
pipe. They'll, use it as the bedding from that point on, flowable material 1 foot above the pipe. Then the fabric, and then that, but.
And even above the pipe? I mean, even above string line?
Yep, 1 foot above the pipe. Kind of follow like normal, the normal backfill details where you need pipe sewer water 1 foot above the pipe. Flowable material all the way over the top solves all the haunching, solves all of any type of mechanical compacting kit in the tank, any disfiguring. 1 foot above
So
the pipe.
that could be another challenge with floating the pipe. So they all have, each method kind of has its challenge. You'd have to secure that. pipe
And
to
it's
the-
dangerous to compact in between the pipe and the walls.
I'm
of
pretty
the
sure that this pipe rolls
excavations.
quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've seen a lot of is, so like you have a sheep's foot running there with an excavator bumping, disfiguring the pipe so much, and then, that's ruining the integrity of the pipe. But if like a 3/8 chips, what they're calling out for, like Contact was calling out for on the base, just run that 3/8 chips all the way up over the top, 1 foot above the pipe. Foot over the pipe, hold it up.
When machine rolls in on it, guess what? It doesn't cave in.
Well, and as long as you're using the proper filter fabric, so you don't have migration of the fines into the chips.
No, the fabric goes over the chips after
Yeah.
you're a foot above.
And then, and then it's just, that's how we're installed, even though that it's above and beyond. It's just a fail safe. It's relying, it's requiring, I don't know, empower my guys out in the field not to crush the pipe. So that's how we're bidding it and installing it.
So it'd be nice to get, if you could take one of these and start getting, just mark it up and get some comments to us, it'd be great. Because this is the first time it's our introduction of the case. This is the first time we've got it out to anybody.
This is a new case.
Yeah.
So this will go in the next year.
No,
It could.
If we can solve it this year, it'll get approved this year, but if not, it might carry over.
Again, this is the last meeting we can introduce new cases for the year.
I mean,
So that's why may not be 100%, but we needed to get it in.
Yes.
well, so also with the aluminizing and all this other things we're using for the anti-corrosive on that, if it gets scuffed, all of a sudden that's it open, and if you're
Yeah.
dealing with
Exactly.
like the flowable material, fill it all the way up, you're not gonna have that. It works in very different ways.
And are you guys using those for the larger diameter storage tanks or just for every kind of?
all the larger 120, 96-inch, all of it.
Are you having issues with, let's say for us, I'm not familiar with underground storage tanks, but something like, I don't know, is it over 6 feet that you having issues or is it just any kind of large underground storage tank?
All my large underground storage, I'm using that to, I mean, as far as the CMP, that's what I'm using. And then any of the other kind of out of right of way, like the ADS or the Prinsco dog houses or those kind of storm tech devices, we're using another flowable rock. They're calling out for 57 rock or number 4 rock, but that's what we're using a lot for backfill over the top of the pipe, a foot over the top of any type of the structures. It's 100% backfill. It's compacted, and it's also, you know, and it's done. There's not a chance of someone crushing it mechanically with a sheep's foot or jumping jack whacker or something along those lines.
How about the outside of right of way group would have? I mean, I think we should probably.
Well, we have vendor, but we knew this was going to get more comments on it. Actually, the vendor has been involved. So when you're saying flowable, what are you talking about?
3/8 chips?
You're talking a dry aggregate.
Yes.
An open graded rock.
Yes, open grade dry aggregate.
And that's been discussed, because this one was not necessarily considering use. This is just the first of details to come on out. Keith Kesty with City of Phoenix has been the primary one working with the vendors to try to do this. You can only get so much out a year. So when you're talking about the other types, that was one of the questions that came up. We'll talk about those different types of rocks in a few minutes. But we know that there will be other options. So if there's other options for this, it'd be interesting to put that down. At the time, I think we were using the old, now defunct city of Chandler, Warren, as the basis for starting on this. And then this was actually worked through Contech, I think. So yeah, we do need feedback.
On those lines, Peter, and Jose, I know you're just kicking this off, and in terms of obviously the material itself, all the efforts there are going to be great to catch that up and make that more current for the CMP. Obviously, it's the installation and all those aspects of the installation that have been some of the problems with CMP. So hopefully there'll be maybe some post-installation inspection requirements in the spec potentially that will find some of these things. On-site is often out of the agency's control in some cases, very little inspection. So it's put on the owner or the engineer to do that. So we've implemented some stamps on our cover sheets that require the engineer to certify that the inspection was completed, things like that. But that's going to be on MAG. But yeah, often it's not necessarily the material itself. It's the fact that they didn't do their maintenance. The water was standing in those pipes for a long time, and it's out of sight, out of mind. So some of those things kind of go beyond the material itself. But yeah, there are definitely times when the coating gets gouged during installation and things like that too. But so
we've been
just some thoughts.
We know the maintenance is an issue.
Yes. For any system, maintenance is always a problem for any product. If you don't do your required maintenance, your service life is not going to. You're not going to.
Well, and there is one company specific that I know, and I won't name by name, but they actually rehabilitate the inside of these things, spin casting. They use a geopolymer, and they can rehabilitate the inside of these, so they don't have to be removed and replaced.
Hi, Warren. So just want to make sure I didn't miss your point. So were you saying that we should add a comment or note related to having the installation certified by the owner's engineer, because this is going to be outside of right away?
That is something I would offer to look into.
That's what we do, guys. We require a geotech, third-party geotech engineer to be there for inspection of installation and backfill and certify that, the right size was put in and all that.
Do you have some standard language you could forward us?
I might, yeah.
That'd be
Then
great.
regarding the backfill, I just, as long, obviously there's different systems out there. They all seem to use a crushed rock or flowable fill. You can't, to me, you should just take off the table completely native and maybe even ABC, because it's the effort of compaction that damages these. That's what I've seen in my experience. And native, you just can't get the right compaction. And ABC takes an effort, but you can't damage the pipe. So whatever system, the ADS, the arches, whatever, they all use a rock system, and I think this would be no exception.
So in this case, it's sorry, are you using any kind of materials for, particular for the bedding? Or is it you're just laying down chips initially and then setting the pipe on top of that?
Yeah, like
all the same.
materials. Yeah, like.
Usually the 57 rock, up to spring line. Sometimes they allow native on top, and I don't like that at all.
I agree.
Usually they take care of the rock up to the spring line just so you get in the haunches and that, but it's after then they want to use native, and so they'll put a filter fabric on top of the pipe, and then they'll put the native, and I've seen it done a few times, and I don't like that at all.
It's a safety issue. This is a real safety issue in this installation. It's dangerous, very dangerous. And to be able to just fill it in with the machine up to a safe distance to work in just makes sense. I mean, mechanically compacting one of these just doesn't work.
Paul, I would agree. Mechanical compaction in anything, when you start getting into pipe larger than 24-inch, to get good haunching is a challenge. But then when you start getting in excavations this large and you're trying to
And that
mechanically
deep, because
compact.
these are all 15, 18 feet deep when you're
Right.
digging the hole.
So in this application, I've seen the chips used, as long as that envelope, as long as it's sealed up well, and you don't have migration of fines, because it's a French drain at that point when you have a big rain event, it could be. And you get infiltration. I've seen gas pumps lay over on their sides because underground storage tanks that envelope wasn't sealed properly, or overlapped. Also the water jetting, like to Jim's point, there's more than one way to do this. And if the soil conditions allow, you have a good washed sand, proper water jetting is another good method of doing this. The controlled low strength material, your half sack slurry, 1 sack slurry, as long as you can protect the pipe from floating it in either case with the water jetting, or, I mean, it's obtainable. It's all, there's more than one way to do that, but I would agree mechanical compaction on an ABC type material is probably the one you want to avoid.
This is excellent feedback. Thank you.
Any other comments from the committee on this case? All right, hearing none, we're going to move to agenda item number 20, outside of right of way 24-D. This is to add new detail 524 and section 665 infiltration trenches. This one also is brought to us by Peter in the outside of right of way working group. Go ahead, Peter.
So this case, as Mr. Chairman, is to provide options for the ability to improve both the retention basins, detention basins, and take away nuisance water. This is a case that developed primarily because we need these for other details in the future. And actually, we wanted to be able to come up with something that was kind of an all-inclusive that captured infiltration trenches and various uses. We did consider pavement under drains. We thought, no, that's kind of outside because that's really a conveyance. Its primary purpose is conveyance. These can be conveyances, but their primary purpose is for taking the water and percolating it in. So we have two elements to that. One is the detail, which has 3 options associated with it. And these were taken from 4 different details that either agencies here down in Tucson were using. I think Salt River Project submitted one. We combined them into a single concept, which would be a maintenance road. This is an unsurfaced maintenance road to take the nuisance water and place it. It perfectly fit into that LID concept. This was City of Tempe's detail that they offered to it. Option B is the retention basin concept. This is a combination of City of Chandler had a detail, and Salt River Project had one where this would be put within a retention basin to improve percolation and get rid of make sure that it meets the vector control requirements of 36 hours. Option C was out of the PAG standards. It looked and it was necessary for the future stormwater harvesting basin detail that we'll work on next year. And again, similar, but it did allow the option of an under drain or an interior drain pipe to be incorporated within that. This was also an ability to try to start standardizing materials. What we noticed was from all of these sort of details, they had different backfill materials associated, but similar concepts. So as we were just talking about the rock backfill, we got with ADS and a number of the others, and said, what's the function of this? And how can we get this generic so we're not specifying a material and leave this open for different purposes? So the specification part of it, which is 665, talks about the materials. We basically have two types of material. One is the drainage material. And this needs a porosity or is a general design porosity of a minimum of 40%. That can be achieved, and we actually were able to say nicely, we specify that using an ASTM C29 test method. It allowed the number 57 rock, for example, the washed concrete aggregate. It allowed the material that Salt River using. It allowed the PAG material. They all fit within this requirement, which made it now a performance standard, which is what we are really shooting for in this. The other is the rock cover, which can be an optional one. Most people seem to be using in their details to have that more solid rock cover over the top. The third element of this, of course, is the geotextile that envelops the whole thing. Now, water is going that direction, but you're going to get migration of fines. That starts beating these things down over time. So we put together the details with the different options, the infiltration trench specification. Added to that was from the conversation we had last meeting, which was, can we look at testing associated with this, the percolation test and or the infiltration test? So we added language in the specification section talking about the different opportunities for using the double ring infiltrometer testing for stuff that's near surface that you could excavate down and do that. It is going a tad outside of the construction specification component, but we thought that we got a lot of feedback saying, can you define the infiltration test to be done? The second one is called the EPA method. This is all within the Maricopa County has these in there. And this is for a situation where you cannot easily access, but you want to make sure you're testing a zone that you're trying to get the percolation into. So we incorporated some language there. I put those in there knowing that we're probably going to get some comments on the testing, but it's the first time we've actually been able to do this and have that opportunity. That EPA method is kind of an adaptation of the old City of Chandler infiltration test before we started getting some of these others. So the idea is that we've got now at least something in writing on infiltration testing on these different methods. Installation general requirements really are kind of, I'd say, almost not necessarily repeated from the spec, the detail, but also shown in the spec. So these, again, were drafted up. We need feedback on these, the detail and the spec. The importance of getting this year is that we would like to get this one so others like the stormwater harvesting basin spec can move forward. We're trying to build these as modules where if you get the building blocks in there, then the other LID specifications and their standards and our details can be put together and reference back to them. So we're not repeating over and over again. So this is one we kind of consider a building block for other uses. Please review and come back with any comments, questions, mark it up. We're happy to start getting this one in this year. We'd really like to do.
Yeah, Peter, you've been busy. You've been a busy elf, you and your team. Wow.
That's what my vacations are for.
Yes.
With my wife.
Chair Peter, well, I've got one comment on that one. Yeah, and just briefly, you had talked about the infiltration testing and you have that in there and provided the two options. I'll just note that in the flood control district manuals that talk about those two testing methods, each method has a different level of safety, that is applied to the testing method. So you got to discount the test results differently for each of those methods. I don't know if you've talked about that in there or referenced the county's hydrology or hydraulics manual in the application of those tests, but something to consider. Both tests are not equal.
Yes, and that's a great point to bring up because we were trying to skirt that edge of testing versus design. Yes, within both those methods, you have two different design methods. You'll see within the EPA method in particular, we do reference the Maricopa County Drainage Policy Standards Manual. If there is a desire to identify that, that may not be bad. I was on the edge on saying, how far do we want to take design in this? Do we want to just make sure that there's a reference to the county manual? Do we want to infer that each has a different quality or safety factor that's associated with it? You're absolutely correct on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a preference. I just, if we're going to identify those tests, I think it needs to be more clear that they're not equivalent tests with equivalent results. So if, you know, I guess that's my thought. If they're going to be listed, maybe err on the side of adding that additional clarification on test results. And if they're not going to be listed, then, and it's just up to the designer, that's okay too.
I kind of like the first thing you said. I went back and forth in my head while doing this. Should I put something in there or that or not? So thanks for the feedback on it.
So is the goal to, as part of the construction, the contractor dig the trench and then you do a test at the bottom of that trench?
That's the funny thing. Usually this should be done in the design phase.
So yeah, that's where I was trying to
No,
guess, because
We're
I don't think
skirting
you
an
can
edge here.
you
We're
can
skirting-
fit the double ring test apparatus in this
Contractor
trenches.
shouldn't be doing that. This is kind of skirting the edge of design, but there had been so many requests to incorporate that. Now.
Should
it's
be
the-
done during the geotech, I would imagine.
Says, why don't we do it? So think about if you want us to keep that in there. There've been several requests to incorporate that somehow in here, and knowing that it's really not the contractor's job to do.
It could be referenced to geotech report.
Maybe, yeah, and maybe there's a way we could word this to get this in
It
here.
should be something in the line that maybe there should be a visual verifications that the soils are in line with the findings of the
Yeah.
geotechnical and drainage report, right? Because that is really early on that you're supposed to be digging down into the expected depths of your trenches to get the right infiltration rate.
Often you don't even have an excavation yet. You don't even have a retention basin. It's going to be dug down whatever umpteen feet that you got to get down there and test it. That was the reason for the EPA test, because often the geotech, when we get out there, we're on flat ground doing drilling. We don't have.
Yeah, you're going off bore logs.
We're doing it with the boring investigation. I've done many of these myself when I was younger, and I could get those. And we were using the City of Chandler method at that time, which is very, very similar to the EPA method. And having an oversized drill hole, putting the 12-inch PVC down there, putting some bedding down there, and running the test.
Well, I encourage the committee members to get some feedback back to Peter.
Mr. Chair, this is Warren. I one last comment on this. If you look at the details, Peter, just wanted to share something I saved from my environmental team last year when they shared the ADQ aspect that they were looking over the underground injection control program from the EPA. And we got to watch not crossing that line between where this becomes a dry well. And you
Yes.
have to register it. But I think the wording is a dug hole whose depth is greater than the largest surface dimension. Then it would become a well and would have to be registered in the UIC program. I can forward that email if you're not familiar with that.
Please send that to me. That's always been a line skirting.
Yeah, that's a good point, Warren. Thank you.
Yes, we don't want it to be classified as a dry well. That's a whole different animal.
Unless we're going to use it in conjunction with a dry.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
we-
sir.
We have another engagement after.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
You will see.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Next month.
All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 21, outside of right-of-way 24-E. This is transfer specifications and details to outside of right-of-way document. There is a lot of outside of right-of-way talk. This one, Peter, you want to go ahead and discuss this?
Yeah,
quickly,
and
briefly?
this was our ability to finally start looking at ones. We kind of threw things out there, knowing that the committee probably wants to look at this in far more detail and decide if these ones, would there be other ones, but we just wanted to open a case for moving of existing standards and or details, sections or details to the outside right of way document. The ones that are proposed at this point in terms of the sections would be primarily looking at the pervious pavement. I think that one was the obvious one we've had sitting out there for a while, both the detail and the standard for pervious pavement, and then the material spec. So you've got a placement, material, and detail associated with pervious pavement that would move directly into it. It's almost always used outside the right of way. That was kind of the low hanging fruit one. The other ones we looked at were exposed aggregate paving that was generally not used that we could see within the right of way, but talk it over, see if that's one. Precast safety curbs was a third one that we looked at that Yeah, we had no feedback that it was used in the right of way. It seemed like they're more outside the right of way.
You know, in some rare cases, when we're retrofitting streets, we end up putting in diagonal parking where do use the detail, so it does come handy, but doesn't mean that if it lives in the outside of right of way.
You can still use it.
Borrow it.
Yeah, it's not prohibited for using in the right of way. It just means where's the,
It resides outside of it.
yeah, its dominant use is probably outside the right of way, but you can always use it inside the right of way. There's no problem with doing that. It's just, there's going to be that difference between what's adopted by the cities versus right now, I think the intent is the outside right of way is not going to be necessarily required for a vote of the cities to be adopted, but it's not like you couldn't use it. The last ones would be chain link fence. That one seemed probably more controversial. We wanted you guys to think about that a little more. Most of the time that we observed it, it's outside the right of way, but it's lived inside the inside right in the current document so long. Is this something that should be moved or not? Bollard, I think, was the last one we had there. We talked about already the fire line check valve and the sediment trap already. So this is kind of a throw out to everybody to look at. We have time to talk about it. There's no great rush. It's going to be one of those things. Yes, I do. No, we don't. And if there's others we hadn't seen, you want to add to that, it'll establish, consider this kind of like the bloopers case. This is one we wanted to have in there so we could make sure we get it done before the end of the year.
Thank you, Peter. All right, any questions on this case?
Hey, Peter, this is Roy. Hey, on the pervious pavement, to one addition for the MAG section, I would probably throw in there also section 323, which is your placement of pervious concrete. You probably would want that added up in the top there.
You have a typo of 303, or is that
303 is the aggregate
Oh.
base.
323? Thank you.
323, yes. And then similar to what Jose said, just as far as our preference would be, we do use the bollards, the safety curbs, and the chain link fence. So our preference would be for those three to stay. I guess the details, the 140, 150, and 160, and their associated specifications to stay in MAG. We do use those quite a bit on capital projects.
Piece of cake. We can always just exclude it from the case as we move forward. I said our goal was to get something in and on the books by this meeting so we could go one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. All right, we'll go ahead and move into agenda item number 22, which is the working group reports. We'll start with the water and sewer working group. Jim, if you want to go ahead and give us an update.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, we met on the June 18th online. Basically, we again discussed what we went through here. I won't go into all details. We discussed some more on Warren's case for the. I know that valve box detail seems to is garnering some attention now, so we'll try to get that wrapped up at the next meeting, and so we can move forward on this year. What else? Service taps. Again, you were there, Mr. Chairman. We did talk about some of the case like 2405, the saddle taps. Good discussion on that. A couple of cases we want to, you mentioned, and remove an update. Talked about that. Talked about in case 2410, that's Arvid's case with the upgrading the casing for the trenchless open cut. I mean, we just have good positive discussion on that, so we should be able to vote on that as requested for next time. Then again, for some of the new cases that might come up, have to be next year now, is with Phoenix introduced protective coating for sanitary sewer on the manholes. We had a good discussion on that. A little bit discussion on cast in place pipe. And that was really about it. We've got some other stuff that's in the works, with some other, engineers, that are on the ASTM spec committee, so for the, sewer testing, the mandrels, so we're hoping to maybe get some specs adopted from them. We are gonna have more discussion on the, revisions to the manhole covers. That'll continue, probably the next couple issues or possible case next year. That's about it. Our next meeting, since we got 5 weeks in July, we're gonna move our meeting to July 23rd. At 1:30 online.
All right. Thank you. All right, thank you, Jim. We'll move on to the asphalt materials concrete working group. I know Greg's been chomping at the bit, talk all day, so we'll give it to Greg.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you can see, just our agenda made it through because we didn't have our meeting until last Thursday. However, the bulk of the conversation was, we didn't have much discussion on 2408, 2409. We did have quite a bit of conversation. As you can see there, we had a couple of comments from the county in regards to slurry seal material that we took out of MAG last time. We're hoping for some more comment to talk about at the next working group, as well as a couple different methods being used for proctors on base courses and subgrades. So hopefully the next working group will take care of that too. We had some other general discussion on some recycled materials and maybe some with other products in them, such as fiber, but that will also be discussed more at our next working group meeting, which is going to be Thursday, July 18th at noon. It'll be a hybrid meeting, but anybody's welcome to come. We always usually have entirely too much food, but lunch will be served. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for the update, Greg. Outside of right-of-way working group, we've got a lot on that. Peter?
Yeah, I think we probably already beat down everything we've been working on anyway, so I think we pretty much covered it.
Yeah.
We've got our next meeting, I think the same thing, July 18th? Is that it? Yeah.
July 18th at what time?
It's a virtual meeting at 11 o'clock.
11 a.m. You can make Peter's meeting and then head over for lunch.
Perfect.
Good work, Peter. You've been getting a lot of stuff done there. That's great.
And he gave us a book. We had to populate it.
Yeah. You got some stuff in there now.
All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 23, newer potential cases for 2024. I can tell you right now that I'm bringing forward, potentially bringing forward to clarify the concrete collar notes, so they're all kind of consistent. Details 120, 270, and 441. I would like to see those all align with the concrete adjustment of 391. So what I'm seeing is inconsistencies in diameters. For instance, 120 is calling out for 40-inch diameter on the left side, but the right side's not calling out for 30-inch diameter in the paved areas. So I haven't put a case together for this yet, but that's definitely a potential case. I have some other irons in the fire that I'm trying to deal with right now, but other than that, any other potential cases for 2024? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Chair. Did you want to open this as a potential case for this year? Or did you just want to hold off till next year?
No, I'm going to hold off until we can get 391 done, and I have some other cases that I need to put effort into.
Okay.
So I think we should wait until next year.
Great, thank you.
All right. We'll move on to agenda item number 24. That's the staff report. Gordon will go ahead and provide.
No report from me this month.
Thank you. That was easy. Agenda item number 25, general discussion. This one here, we're gonna open up for general discussion. Gordon, I noticed on the agenda, the chair will lead a discussion on topics of interest relating the specification. Typo should be relating to the specifications. But anyway, we'll open it up for general discussion. Okay, agenda item number 26, request for future agenda items. Are there any requests from members for an item on a future agenda? All right, hearing none. Move to the next agenda item. Number 27, comments from the committee. This is where we can talk about current events, different types of things going around through the city. We're not going to deliberate or take any action on anything here. One thing I just wanted to note that on June 14th, 2024, an amendment to House Bill 2091, which was basically was first introduced to continue the register of contractors. I found section 6. I found that there's a revision to it. The register of contractors shall study and compile a report on commercial contractors to determine whether opportunities exist to statutorily remove the agency's oversight of the commercial contracting profession. That kind of took me off guard, but the register of contractors shall submit its findings to the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives on or before December 31st, 2024. So I just wanted to put that out there to the group. I was shocked when I heard they're trying to compile this report to potentially look at removing oversight. So that's all I have. Anybody else have any comments? Current events or anything they want to bring up? All right, so our next meeting for the Standard Specification and Detail Committee is going to be scheduled for August 7th at 1:30 p.m. With no further business today, we'll call this meeting adjourned.